So let's get started. Again, this is the EST English Evidence-Based Reading Final Revision, or Literacy 2 test, because Literacy 1 is the writing and language, and Literacy 2 is the reading test. So again, if you remember, we want to tackle the test, and we want to keep in mind time management. We want to manage our time carefully. So when we think about the test itself in terms of time management, we know that you have 5 reading passages that you need to skim and scan and close read. And these passages are divided as follows: 1 literary passage or fiction. Then you have 4 other passages, 2 science passages, and this is going to be non-fiction. And then you have 1 history, also non-fiction. And 1 social sciences, also non-fiction. So the history one is also called global conversation. But anyways, what we see here is actually 3 of the passages here, 4 of the passages here are non-fiction. And 1 passage is fiction. So proportionally, the number of non-fiction passages is 4 to 1, right? So 4 passages non-fiction and 1 fiction passage. I have bad news and good news. The good news is that the non-fiction passages are way much easier than the fiction passages. The bad news is that the fiction passage is time consuming, and you have to read all of it in order to be able to answer the questions. We're talking here about 1,000 words. So usually the
Mr. I'm going to do it from my laptop, okay, Mr. Accept me.
Okay. So the first passage is usually the fiction passage. And if you start with the fiction passage, you are going to waste much valuable time. So in order to manage your time, you actually keep the literary passage the last one. You might be asking me, like, but it usually shows up first on the exam. But yes, despite the fact that it shows up the first one in the exam, nobody's going to judge you for not answering the questions in order. And so the interesting thing is that you can actually postpone it. You can postpone this passage till last. Now, another thing is one of these passages, one of the non-fiction passages, is going to be a paired passage. And paired passage means it's divided into 2 smaller passages with the continuation of line numbering. So the first passage might end in line 65, and the following passage will start from line 66. And so this paired passage is also time consuming, but actually it's accessible. You can deal with it. So when you think about it, each passage of the 5 passages is going to be followed by 10 or 11 questions, and two of the passages will include infographics accompanying them. And these two passages that have infographics in them must be nonfiction, because infographics never show up with the fiction passages, the fiction passage. So with this in mind, and considering the time constraints that you have, because you have 65 minutes to tackle 52 questions, we have decided that you should begin with the science passage, the science passages, then the social science passage, then the history passage, and if any of these is a paired passage, so don't tackle it at first, but tackle it as the one before last, because the last passage, which is going to be a literary passage or part of a novel, part of a short story, will show up first. And so you need to move on. And the literary passage usually followed by 10 questions. So you will notice in the blurb that the test maker is telling you this is a part of a novel. And so if you follow this order, you're going to save yourself way much time. So keep in mind that the passage number 4 that you tackle it as the fourth one is the paired passage. And the last one you tackle is the literary passage. Now, chances that if you did very well in the single non-fiction passages, you will have enough time with no pressure, no anxiety whatsoever to tackle these two passages. So this is what we call an order of attack. If you attack the non-fiction passages, you will be able to have time to deal with the paired, which is also non-fiction, and the literary passage. Now, why exactly do we attack the non-fiction passages? And that's a smart question that I did ask. You didn't ask, I did ask. So this is a critical question because you will be convinced now why you should begin with the single non-fiction passages, right? First of all, because you guys are single, right? And so you can relate to that. But again, there is a reason why these non-fiction passages are much easier to attack, because they have a specific organization that will help you spot the thesis statement. So I have created a 5-step approach to attack mainly the non-fiction passages. And first of all, you need to read the blurb. Excuse me, guys. And the blurb is the background information that you find on top of the passage. So it comes at the beginning of the passage, and it can help you find out about the topic of the passage. So this will help you learn more about the main idea. So you read the blurb, you don't read passively, but you read actively, because reading the blurb is going to help you identify the topic of the passage. All right. And then, especially for the non-fiction passages, because I told you about, they have a specific writing method. So they follow that approach. You read the first paragraph because it has the thesis statement, which is the last sentence of the paragraph. You also read the opening sentence of each body paragraph. Most importantly, you must read the last sentence of the passage, because that's the exit statement. Now, while reading, keep in mind signposts. Now, signposts are important to show you the direction the passage is taking. So, for example, if you see, however, you know what comes next is in contrast with what comes before. So he seems happy, but he has a serious conflict with his wife, right? So you can tell the meaning of conflict, even if you don't know it, which is the opposite, which is something that doesn't make him really happy, but he seems happy. Now, continuous they keep the meaning in the same direction. For example, furthermore, moreover, in addition, besides. Here is an example. The players are excited about their last win. Moreover, they're hoping for winning the championship. Now, the colon and semicolon indicate upcoming explanations. This could be helpful in identifying the meaning of unfamiliar words. Could be an excellent context clue to help you know the meaning of a word you don't know. He brought along his vivacious wife. She's very active and helps everyone. Now, if you don't really understand the meaning of vivacious, you can tell that what comes after the colon does explain it. So vivacious means energetic, active, full of life. In fact, viv means lively, and acious means full of. So vivacious means full of life. Now, if you are looking for causes and effects, right? Results indicate cause and effect. Since such is the case, hence, thus, consequently, she got the flu, so she went to hospital. Now, once you have you're done with the housekeeping, skimming the passage. This is what we call skimming the passage, right? And once you're done with this, you need actually to do the textual evidence questions first. Now, the textual evidence questions are the secret to excelling on the EST reading test. So what do I mean by textual evidence questions? Textual evidence questions come in two forms, 2-in-1 and 1-in-1. So 2-in-1 is, two questions, which are basically the same question. And in the first question, the writer will ask you about a specific idea from the passage. The following question will ask you about the best evidence to the answer to the previous question. And the choices will be lines, right, or citations from the passage, like lines 3 to 5, and will give you the first word and second and last word. So that's the first form of textual evidence questions. Now, the second form is the writer gives you an idea, but only asks you about the evidence, right? So, for example, the writer could ask you, what is the best evidence to the conclusion that? What's the best evidence to the conclusion that? So again, the 1-in-1 textual evidence question will have just citations. Now, what's interesting about these questions is that you are actually reading some parts of the passages that you may have not read in the skimming stage. And so when you read, this will give you a better understanding of the passage, but at the same time, you are likely to answer questions later on with no reference to the passage from your memory, because you're going to underline and highlight ideas on the margin. You can actually take notes and understand what a paragraph is focusing on or discussing. So once you're done with the textual evidence questions, and by the way, each of the 5 passages will have around 4 questions of these, or 2 pairs. So almost half of the questions in the reading test will be textual evidence questions or evidence questions. And once you're done with this, you go again and answer the specific line reference questions. Now, remember, you don't have to tackle the passages in order. You don't have to answer the questions in the passage in order. So again, questions that have specific line reference will be vocabulary in context, for example. And make sure with vocabulary and context questions that you read a sentence before and a sentence after, because specifically for the specific line reference, the answers are not usually located in the line references. So, for example, if the test maker tells you in line 13, don't expect to find the answer in line 13. You can find it in lines 11 or in lines 11, 12, or maybe 14, 15. Now, once you're done with this, you go to the big picture questions or main point questions. Now, these questions will show up directly after the passage, like maybe questions 1 and 2 and 3, the first questions, but we tackle them last because they don't have any line reference. They need us to have read most of the passage. And so they can ask you about the topic, about the main idea, about the primary purpose, the point of view, providing a summary of the passage. Now that you have a better idea from addressing the detailed questions, you can answer the big picture questions much better and faster at the same time. There are two specific types of questions in the reading that are really time consuming. And if you don't have time, I'd rather I'd prefer if you keep them till last. And these are the comparison questions in the paired passage that ask you about both passages. And also, so we call them comparison questions. And they are in the paired passage because they compare between the two passages in the paired passage. And data questions. And data questions are about graphics or the graphs that accompany two of the nonfiction passages, because each reading test has two passages that are followed by graphics. They can be pie chart, bar graph, line graph, table, maybe two tables, a table and a graph, etc. So these questions, interestingly, will show up last. And for the comparison questions in the paired passage, you can actually guess on these because they're really time consuming. For the data questions, you can rely only on the graphic to answer them. So you don't have to refer to the passage, but focus on the graph. Now, in order to understand the graph or the graphic, you need to read its title, check the captions or explanations, see the axes, if it's a bar graph or a line graph. Now notice any outliers. And by outliers, I mean strange trends that do not follow, you know.
Infographics, yes.
So infographics like a table. You know that some passages.
Okay.
Yeah, so we call them infographics because they are graphics that provide information visually. So if you notice any outliers or something strange in the data, expect a question to pop up asking about such an outlier. So maybe, for example, across years, the number of population is increasing, but in a specific year in the middle, the number of population is decreasing. So maybe a question will be about this one, right? So you have to be aware of any outliers. For example, if a pie chart tells you about the percentage of people in each job, so it doesn't give you an idea about how many days these people go to work, right? So if you see an answer asking you about how often people go to work, telling you like these people go to work like thrice a week or 3 times a week. Now this is wrong because the pie chart does not provide such a piece of information. Is that clear, you guys?
Yes, Mr. Yes.
Perfect. When you tackle questions about graphics, make sure you read the answer choices carefully and completely and thoroughly. If you read half of the answer choice, you're likely to get it wrong. Now make sure you check each answer to see if it's supported by the data, right? Now, the last part in this revision is the most important part. And one strategy we've always talked about and used in our practice is the process of elimination, or POE. And keep in mind that you get 4 choices. If you can eliminate 2, if you can eliminate 1, if you can eliminate 2, this will give you a 50% chance, to get the correct answer. If you can eliminate 3, for sure, you get a 100% chance. So one way to address a question is to eliminate wrong answer choices. Now, keep in mind that these wrong choices are designed to look right. They're not right. So I feel like the reading test, they play a game. Who's the real doctor? Like giving you 4 people, like all of them are wearing coats, right? And all of them have, all of them look like a doctor. So all of them are wearing stethoscopes, right? But only one of them is a real doctor. And you start to talk to them to find who the real doctor is. So keep in mind that they address like a doctor, but 3 of them are not real doctors. And that's the trick when it comes to the EST reading test. So luckily, we could find some patterns here. And the pattern, there are 6 patterns of wrong answer choices. If you remember, we called them before sheeps. We called them a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? So a wolf in sheep's clothing is like somebody who's pretending to be nice and kind, but they're not. They are imposters. And so these wrong choices are designed to look right. Now, keep in mind that the correct answer, we can all agree on it. And the correct answers in the reading test have 3 characteristics. First, they use synonyms, not exact wording from the passage. They can, we can prove them by referring to the passage only. And most importantly, they contain all the information from the passage, or complete information from the passage, right? So not partially correct. So the 6 patterns of wrong choices on the EST reading test are copycats, and basically these answer choices repeat words from the passage like adjectives and verbs verbatim, like word for word. Now we mentioned that the correct answer will use synonyms or synonymous phrases rather than exact wording. Now another answer could be, another wrong answer choice is the opposite answer choice. Opposite containing words like not, unhappy, while the character in the passage is happy. Or maybe flip-flop, which is a form of the opposite answer choice, in which, like, for example, if the passage tackles the effect of humans on the environment, now the answer choice will be the main topic of the passage is the effect of the environment on humans. Did you guys notice the flip-flop? Like changing the order of the focus of the passage here. Now, the third pattern is extreme answers, like entire, whole, every, each, always, only. Now, these are extreme answers, but also you have extreme adjectives like thoroughly. Thoroughly means completely, okay? For example, one character may be angry or a bit annoyed, and then you find the answer furious. Now, we talked before that the correct answer choice should have all information correct from the passage. Now, pattern number 4 in wrong answer choices is half right or half wrong. It means like, to some point, the answer is correct, but then it will include words like however, but, or yet that will make it wrong. So how to avoid falling in such a trap? Make sure you read each answer choice fully till the full stop. So you avoid missing a word that you didn't read carefully. Now, another pattern or another trap is what we call true but wrong. But this choice you can easily eliminate because it's obvious, it's off topic, right? In order to avoid falling in this trap, you have to read the question carefully and understand what it wants, right? Like, what's the question? I call this trap go to hell answer choices. So you will easily eliminate such a choice. Now, the 6th pattern or the 6th trap is very common among Egyptian students. And it's what we call true to you, because the answer choice appeals to your previous knowledge, what you know before. And so maybe you know like a specific habit of a specific animal, so you take it for granted, but actually maybe the passage doesn't address that or doesn't talk about that. So in order to avoid falling in this trap, make sure you always prove your answer with a reference to the passage. Like, don't assume anything, right? So again, avoid falling in these traps and you'll do very well. Now, the good thing about understanding these patterns is that you can easily eliminate you can easily eliminate wrong choices. And so you will be kind of sure about the answer you choose, the answer choice that you pick, and you'll be more confident in your answers. That's all, everybody. And I wish you the best of luck tomorrow, inshallah.
Mister, Mister.
Yes. If you have any questions, you guys go ahead.